What if you could learn data science, AI, cybersecurity, cloud computing, digital marketing, and even project management completely free? No fees, no catch. And yes, you get a certificate too. Welcome to OMNI Academy, Pakistan's leading IT training institute since 2010, part of MHSG Consulting Group, helping thousands build real-world skills and land jobs. Every month, OMNI Academy offers 50+ free workshops taught by industry experts covering everything from AI and cloud to cybersecurity, networking, and more. Whether you're a student, a professional, or just starting out, there's something for you. Join online from anywhere in Pakistan, Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, or beyond. So don't wait. Register now at omniacademy.com and secure your spot today. OMNI Academy, your career transformation starts here, and it starts free.
Imagine you receive an email. It looks completely normal. Your name is there, the company logo looks familiar. The message tells you that your account needs verification, and there is a button asking you to log in. You click it. The page looks exactly like the real website. You enter your username and password, and just like that, someone else may have what they need to access your account. Now here's the interesting question. Did the attacker break through a complicated security system? Maybe. But in many real-world attacks, the biggest weakness isn't always advanced technology. Sometimes it's a person. Sometimes it's a weak password. Sometimes it's an outdated application. Sometimes it's a misconfigured server. And sometimes it's simply a system that was never properly secured. This is where ethical hacking comes in. Ethical hackers learn to think like attackers, but they use that knowledge for a completely different purpose. Their job is not to steal information. Their job is to discover weaknesses before criminals can exploit them. And that's exactly what we're going to explore in this introductory workshop. Welcome to Free Ethical Hacking Intro: How Hackers Think and Work. What is ethical hacking? Let's start with the most basic question. What exactly is ethical hacking? Ethical hacking is the authorized process of examining systems, networks, applications, or devices to identify security weaknesses. The key word here is authorized. Without permission, attempting to access someone else's computer, account, website, network, or data can be illegal. An ethical hacker operates within an agreed scope. That means the organization clearly defines what can be tested, what cannot be tested, how testing will be performed, and how the findings should be reported. So think of an ethical hacker as a security professional who asks, if I were an attacker, where would I look for weaknesses? Then they use controlled and authorized methods to find those weaknesses. The organization can then fix them. This creates a simple cycle. Find the weakness, understand the risk, report it, fix it, test again. That is one of the foundations of ethical hacking. Part 2. Ethical hacker versus malicious hacker. You may have heard terms like hacker, attacker, black hat, white hat, and ethical hacker. Let's simplify them. A malicious hacker attempts to gain unauthorized access or cause harm. An ethical hacker works with permission to improve security. The technical knowledge can sometimes overlap. The difference is primarily in authorization, intention, and responsibility. Imagine two people know how to test whether a door is locked. One person has permission from the building owner to inspect every entrance. The other person is trying to enter a building without permission. The technique might look similar. The context is completely different. This is why cybersecurity professionals must understand both technology and ethics. Knowing how something works is not enough. You must also know when you are allowed to use that knowledge. Part 3. How do hackers think? Now we come to the most important part of today's topic. How do hackers actually think? A beginner might look at a website and think, that's a website. A security professional looks at it differently. They may ask, what technologies are being used? What information is publicly available? What entry points exist? How does authentication work? What happens when a user enters incorrect information? What happens if someone submits unexpected input? Are there unnecessary services exposed? Are software components outdated? Are permissions configured correctly? What happens if one account is compromised? The ethical hacker is constantly asking questions. They are curious. They observe. They investigate. They form hypotheses. and then they test those hypotheses in a controlled environment. This mindset is more important than memorizing hundreds of commands. Because cybersecurity changes constantly. Tools change, operating systems change, applications change, but the ability to think critically remains valuable. Reconnaissance. One of the first concepts you will encounter in ethical hacking is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance simply means gathering information. Before attempting to assess security, a professional needs to understand the environment. Imagine you're hired to assess the security of a large organization. You wouldn't immediately start testing random systems. First, you'd want to understand what you're dealing with. What domains are involved? What applications are publicly available? What technologies are being used? What services are exposed? What information has the organization intentionally or unintentionally made public? This stage is often called information gathering, and there are different levels of reconnaissance. There is passive reconnaissance, where information is collected without directly interacting with the target systems in a potentially intrusive way. Then there is active reconnaissance, where authorized interaction with systems may be involved. The important point is that ethical hackers work within the agreed rules of engagement. Reconnaissance helps build a picture of the environment, and that picture can reveal potential areas that deserve further investigation. Part 5. Understanding attack surface. Now let's introduce another important cybersecurity concept: attack surface. Think about a company. It might have a website, a mobile application, employee laptops, cloud services, email accounts, remote access systems, APIs, databases, servers, third-party integrations. Every exposed component can potentially become part of the organization's attack surface. The larger the attack surface, the more opportunities there may be for security weaknesses. This doesn't automatically mean a large attack surface is insecure. It means there are more things that need to be properly managed and protected. For ethical hackers, understanding the attack surface helps answer an important question: where should we look? Part 6. Vulnerabilities. Now let's talk about vulnerabilities. A vulnerability is essentially a weakness that could potentially be exploited to negatively affect confidentiality, integrity, or availability. Let's break those three terms down. Confidentiality. Confidentiality means information should only be accessible to people who are authorized to see it. For example, customer records should not be publicly accessible. Integrity. Integrity means information should not be improperly changed or manipulated. For example, an unauthorized person should not be able to alter financial records. Availability. Availability means systems and information should be accessible when legitimate users need them. For example, a company's online service should remain available to customers. These three concepts form a major foundation of cybersecurity. You will often hear them referred to as the CIA triad: integrity, availability. Understanding these concepts gives you a better way to think about security risks. Common security weaknesses. Let's look at some common categories of weaknesses. One example is weak authentication. If users have extremely simple passwords or organizations don't properly protect authentication systems, attackers may have an easier path toward unauthorized access. Another issue is outdated software. Software developers regularly release security updates because vulnerabilities are discovered over time. If an organization ignores important updates, known weaknesses may remain exposed. Another issue is misconfiguration. A system may be secure when configured correctly, but become vulnerable because of incorrect permissions, unnecessary services, exposed interfaces, or insecure settings. Then we have human error. Employees may accidentally share sensitive information. They may click suspicious links. They may reuse passwords. They may unknowingly expose credentials. This is why cybersecurity isn't only about technology. It is also about people, processes, awareness, and organizational practices. Part 8. Social engineering. Let's talk about one of the most interesting areas of cybersecurity: social engineering. Social engineering focuses on manipulating people rather than directly attacking technology. Imagine someone receives a message claiming to be from their organization's IT department. The message says, "Your account will be disabled unless you verify your credentials immediately." The employee becomes worried. They click a link. They provide information. The attacker has successfully manipulated the person's decision. This is an example of the kind of psychological pressure social engineering can involve. Common themes include urgency, fear, authority, curiosity, trust. The lesson for security professionals is important. A technically strong system can still be affected by human behavior. That's why security awareness training is so important. Part 9. Phishing. One of the most common forms of social engineering is phishing. Phishing involves deceptive communication designed to convince someone to reveal information, click a malicious link, open an attachment, or perform another action that benefits the attacker. Phishing can happen through email, it can happen through messaging platforms, it can happen through social media, it can even involve phone calls. A security professional learns to identify warning signs. For example, unexpected requests, suspicious links, unusual sender addresses, urgent language, requests for passwords, requests for financial information, unexpected attachments. But here's the important point. Good phishing awareness isn't about assuming every message is dangerous. It's about verifying unexpected requests before taking action. Part 10. Password security. Let's move to something everyone interacts with. Passwords. Passwords are one of the oldest forms of authentication, and they remain extremely important. A weak password can create unnecessary risk. Using the same password across multiple services creates another problem. Imagine your password is exposed from one website. If you've reused that same password somewhere else, the attacker may attempt to use it there as well. This is why password managers, unique passwords, and multi-factor authentication are important security practices. Multi-factor authentication adds another layer. Instead of relying only on something you know, such as a password, authentication can also involve something you have or something you are. For example, a verification code, a security key, or biometric authentication. The idea is simple. If one layer fails, another layer can still help protect the account. Ports and services. You may have heard cybersecurity professionals talk about ports. A port can be thought of as a communication endpoint associated with network services. Different services commonly use different ports. For example, web services typically use well-known ports for HTTP and HTTPS traffic. The important idea for beginners isn't memorizing every port number. It's understanding the relationship. Device, network, port, service, application. If a service is exposed, it needs to be appropriately secured. An ethical security assessment may examine which services are accessible and whether they are expected and properly configured. This is where network security knowledge becomes extremely useful. Part 13. Web application security. Today, a huge amount of business activity happens through web applications. Shopping, banking, education, communication, customer management, payments, internal business operations. This makes web applications an important area of cybersecurity. Ethical hackers may assess how applications handle authentication, authorization, input validation, sessions, data protection, and other security controls. One important distinction beginners should understand is authentication versus authorization. Authentication asks, "Who are you?" Authorization asks, "What are you allowed to do?" Imagine you successfully log into an application. That's authentication. But whether you are allowed to access an administrator function is authorization. A secure application needs both. Part 14. Why input validation matters. Let's discuss another major concept: input validation. Whenever users enter information into an application, the application should carefully handle that input. Why? Because applications should never blindly trust user-provided data. An attacker may deliberately provide unexpected input to see how the application behaves. This is why secure development practices include validating and safely processing inputs. Ethical hackers test applications for these types of weaknesses in controlled environments, and developers use the findings to improve the application. This is an excellent example of how offensive and defensive cybersecurity work together. Part 15. Vulnerability scanning. Ethical hackers also use security tools to identify potential weaknesses. One category is vulnerability scanning. A vulnerability scanner can examine systems and compare what it finds against databases or security checks associated with known weaknesses. But there is an important lesson here. A scanner is a tool. It is not a replacement for human judgment. A scanner might report something that requires further verification. It may produce false positives. It may not understand the business context. A professional must interpret the results. That's why cybersecurity requires both technical tools and analytical thinking. Exploitation in ethical hacking. You may hear the word exploitation frequently in cybersecurity. In simple terms, exploitation means taking advantage of a vulnerability. In ethical hacking, exploitation must happen only when explicitly authorized and within the defined scope. The purpose is to demonstrate risk. For example, a security professional might safely demonstrate that a vulnerability could allow unauthorized access to a test account or controlled environment. The objective is not to steal information. The objective is to prove the security issue and help the organization understand its impact. Professional ethical hackers carefully control their testing to avoid unnecessary damage. Part 17. Privilege and access. Another concept you will encounter is privilege. Not every user should have access to everything. An ordinary employee shouldn't necessarily have administrator privileges. A customer shouldn't have access to another customer's records. A web application should not expose internal administrative functionality to unauthorized users. This is known as the principle of least privilege. Give users and systems only the access they actually need. Why? Because if an account is compromised, limited permissions can reduce the potential damage. This is an important defensive principle and something ethical hackers actively look for during assessments. Part 18. What happens after a security finding? Finding a vulnerability is only part of the job. The next question is, what do we do about it? This is where reporting becomes extremely important. A professional penetration testing report may explain what was discovered, where it was discovered, how serious the issue is, what could happen if it remains unresolved, how the issue can be addressed, and what evidence supports the finding. Good cybersecurity professionals don't simply say, "Your system is vulnerable." They explain the problem clearly enough for technical teams and decision makers to understand. A strong report turns technical findings into actionable security improvements. Cybersecurity tools. As you progress into ethical hacking, you will encounter many tools. Some are designed for network analysis, some are used for vulnerability assessment, some help analyze web applications, others help security professionals inspect traffic, investigate systems, or test security controls. You may hear names such as Nmap, Wireshark, Burp Suite, Metasploit, Kali Linux, and many others. But remember something very important. Tools don't make someone a hacker. Understanding what you're doing does. A beginner who memorizes commands without understanding networking, operating systems, web applications, and security principles will quickly become stuck. Build the foundation first, then learn the tools. Part 20. Kali Linux. You may have heard of Kali Linux. Kali is a Linux distribution designed for security professionals and penetration testing. It includes a large collection of security tools. For beginners, Kali can seem overwhelming. There are hundreds of tools and commands available, but don't try to learn everything at once. Start with the fundamentals. Learn Linux. Understand files and permissions. Learn networking. Understand IP addresses. Learn how DNS works. Understand HTTP and HTTPS. Learn basic scripting. Then start exploring security tools. The tools will make much more sense when you understand the technology underneath them. Part 21. Building a safe ethical hacking lab. One of the best ways to learn ethical hacking is through a controlled lab. Instead of testing random systems on the internet, you can create your own environment. For example, you can use virtual machines to create a small cybersecurity lab. One machine can act as your testing system. Another can act as a deliberately vulnerable practice environment. Because you own and control the environment, you can experiment safely. This is one of the best ways to develop practical cybersecurity skills. You can make mistakes. You can break things. You can reset the environment. And you can try again. That is how practical learning happens. Part 22. The cybersecurity mindset. Let's step back for a moment. What makes someone good at ethical hacking? It's not simply technical knowledge. It's curiosity. An ethical hacker asks, why does this work? What happens if I change this? Why is this service exposed? Why does this user have this permission? Why does this application behave differently with different inputs? That curiosity leads to investigation. But there is another important quality: patience. Cybersecurity investigations don't always produce immediate results. You may spend hours understanding a system before discovering a small configuration issue. You may test something repeatedly before understanding what's happening. You need to be comfortable with investigation. Part 23. The best ethical hackers don't only think like attackers, they also think like defenders. If you discover a vulnerability, you should immediately start thinking, how can this be fixed? How can we prevent it from happening again? How can we detect attempts to exploit it? How can we reduce the potential impact? How can we improve monitoring? This mindset turns ethical hacking into a security improvement process. You aren't simply breaking things, you're helping organizations build stronger systems. Career opportunities in cybersecurity. If you're interested in ethical hacking, you may be wondering, where can this career take me? Cybersecurity has many different paths. You can explore penetration testing, security operations, network security, cloud security, application security, incident response, digital forensics, security engineering, vulnerability management, governance, risk and compliance, and many other areas. Ethical hacking is only one part of the broader cybersecurity ecosystem. The skills you develop can also help you move into other security roles. Part 25. Skills you should start learning. If you're serious about entering cybersecurity, don't focus only on hacking tools. Build a strong foundation. Start with networking. Learn concepts such as IP addresses, DNS, TCP and UDP, ports, protocols, routing, firewalls. Then learn operating systems. Understand Linux, understand Windows. Learn about users, permissions, processes, services, and files. Then learn basic programming or scripting. Python can be especially useful for automation and security tasks. You should also learn web technologies. Understand HTML, HTTP, APIs, cookies, sessions, authentication, databases, and basic JavaScript concepts. The stronger your technical foundation, the easier cybersecurity becomes. Part 26. Certifications and learning paths. Certifications can also help structure your learning. Depending on your career goal, you may eventually explore certifications focused on networking, security fundamentals, penetration testing, or advanced cybersecurity. But remember, a certificate can show that you studied something. Practical skills show that you can apply it. Build projects, practice in legal labs, document what you learn, participate in cybersecurity challenges, build a home lab, study real security incidents, and keep improving. Part 27. The most important rule. Before we finish, I want you to remember one rule above everything else. Never test a system without permission. Don't scan random websites. Don't attempt to access someone else's account. Don't test a company's network because you are curious. Don't exploit a vulnerability simply because you discovered it. Instead, use legal environments designed for learning. Use your own lab. Use intentionally vulnerable applications. Use authorized bug bounty programs and follow their rules. Use training platforms. Cybersecurity knowledge is powerful, and powerful knowledge comes with responsibility. Final recap. So what have we learned today? Ethical hacking is about finding security weaknesses with authorization. We discussed how hackers think. We looked at reconnaissance and attack surfaces. We explored vulnerabilities. We discussed confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We looked at social engineering and phishing. We discussed password security. We explored networks, ports, and services. We introduced web application security. We discussed vulnerability scanning. We talked about exploitation in controlled environments. We explored access control and least privilege. We discussed security reporting. And we looked at tools such as Nmap, Wireshark, Burp Suite, Metasploit, and Kali Linux. But most importantly, we talked about the mindset. Cybersecurity isn't simply about running commands. It's about understanding systems, asking questions, investigating problems, thinking critically, finding weaknesses, and helping people and organizations become more secure. If today's introduction made you curious about cybersecurity, this is only the beginning. There is a whole world waiting for you to explore. From networking and Linux to penetration testing, web security, vulnerability assessment, digital forensics, and security operations. There are many different paths you can take. And the best way to learn is by combining theory with practical experience. Start with the fundamentals. Build your own legal practice environment. Learn how systems communicate. Understand how vulnerabilities happen. And gradually learn how security professionals identify and address them. If you're interested in continuing your cybersecurity journey, explore the ethical hacking and cybersecurity training opportunities available through OMNI Academy. And here's something you don't want to miss. As a workshop participant, you can get an exclusive 20% discount on selected OMNI Academy courses and training programs, valid for 7 days after the workshop. So if today's session helped you discover an area of cybersecurity you'd like to pursue, this is a great opportunity to continue your learning with structured training and practical guidance. To stay updated, visit our website and follow our social media pages for upcoming workshops, courses, certifications, learning resources, and career opportunities. You can also subscribe to our OMNI Academy Training WhatsApp channel to receive updates about upcoming workshops, training programs, and special offers. And if you're looking for career opportunities, don't forget to join our OMNI Jobs WhatsApp channel, where we regularly share job vacancies, internships, and career opportunities. Stay connected, keep learning, and don't miss the next opportunity to build your skills. Thank you for joining this free ethical hacking intro, How Hackers Think and Work session. If you enjoyed this workshop, share it with someone who is interested in cybersecurity and wants to start their journey. Keep learning, keep practicing, keep exploring, and most importantly, hack ethically.